Raquel Smith. I'm here with
Prince Williams.
And Sean Williams.
you guys. Welcome to us coming back on the air, and we were actually discussing what we should talk about now that we're back, and we realized that we totally skipped over the law school era, the law school phase of our lives.
Yeah.
Maybe because I wanted to block it out. I know Sean.
A lot of people do.
Sean was a law school nerd. He went to class dressed like this every day.
I did, actually. I actually really did.
We just sort of wanted to give you guys a little bit of an insight of what it was like to go through the entire law school process, and then what it's like on the other side once you graduate, you pass the bar, and you can sort of reap the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
So we'll start with Prince.
Yeah.
Okay,
How
cool.
was your law school experience?
Yeah, so law school was kind of bittersweet for me. Well, it was a mix. You know, I had mixed feelings. You know, initially I was excited about going to law school, just really happy that, you know, I had the opportunity to actually go. But, you know, when I got there, it was something totally different than what I had even expected it to be. You know, for me, law school was definitely a challenge. You know, I got in on an academic scholarship, but unfortunately, that first semester, I was placed on academic probation.
Oh, man.
And so, you know, when you're in that space where you just got an opportunity kind of given to you and to be on academic probation, I really went through a lot of mental struggle with that. You know, to think that this journey, which had just begun, is almost about to end. So
if you don't mind me asking, the academic probation, was it because you weren't taking it seriously enough, or because I know when I started law school, I was like, I got it, and I didn't have it. It was really a lot tougher than I expected. Yeah. So I don't know if that was your experience.
I think it was that. You know, I did really well in undergrad. I had went to graduate school before going to law school. Did really well. So for me, you know, I'm always a kind of, when it came to school, I would read right before class, you know, and so...
And you kill it.
Yeah, and I did really well.
And that was me too.
So law school, the whole structure, the setup is just different, you guys know. And, you know, it's something that you just can't read last minute like that. And so, yeah, that's what it was, just trying to figure out how to learn in a law school environment. And not to, you know, mention that it's very competitive, super competitive. Like even how they have the bell curve and how we're graded against each other, Yeah.
And Sean, you loved every minute of it?
No. Okay, so I had slightly a different experience, and my first year was also very difficult, but it was in the sense of I thought I could just work extremely hard, and then I would reap the fruits of my labor. It would, you know, show on my grades, and that wasn't the case. I had to learn the system with law school. I had to learn that there is a system with it. So yes, there's the work hard portion, but you also have to work smart.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but I didn't learn that till my second and third year. So my first year it was, okay, I'm gonna be in the library for 12 hours. I'm gonna grind it out, and I should get an A in this class. And
why not?
Exactly, why not? Because that's what I was used to. That's what I was used to. You work hard, you put in your time, and you get the grades. But law school literally had to break down my whole mental.
Well, there's a different way that you study as well in law school. It's not like you can just like read straight through. You really have to parse through your law school books, make outlines, make things succinct, and focus on those topics and things like that.
You know, another thing that I realized though is that, you know, my approach initially was to kind of look around and see what everybody else is doing. How is everybody else studying? A lot of my colleagues are in the library making these long 50-page outlines.
Which is like, what's the point?
And so I learned later on that I don't learn that way. I don't learn by retyping a whole outline. I learn differently. And so it took me understanding that we learn differently and not pretty much run your own race. Don't worry about how she's studying and how he's studying and how many hours someone stays in the library. You know, I knew a lot of people who spent all day in the library, but
guilty.
But they struggled though. Guilty. Like they didn't do well, even though they put all these hours in. And so it goes back to what you're saying, being effective and efficient with your study.
Yeah,
definitely.
See, with me, I'm more of a tactile learner.
Yeah.
So, and I learned that my second and my third year, where I would have to go to the professor's office and speak with the professor.
Yeah, that helps.
And I honestly, it was like a cheat sheet, honestly, because by me speaking with the professor, I would get to learn exactly what the professor was looking for in their exams. So when I'm writing my essay, so for example, I had this professor that he only looked at buzzwords. So he wouldn't really fully read the full essay. He would just see if you put in certain words. So after I learned that, I would underline those words for him. So when he's reading through my essay, and he wouldn't know it was me at that point, because he was like, "You're the underline, aren't you?" Sure am, because I know what you're looking for at this point.
Yeah.
So it's the definitely, again, the work hard component, but know how you learn, as you mentioned, because I can't just. It was literally driving me insane spending almost 12 hours in the library.
No. I'd be like, it's time for a margarita.
What about you, Raquel?
Yeah.
Like, how was your experience?
Law school was very challenging for me. I think I'm generally a pretty laid back person, so the competitive nature of it doesn't help me in any sense of the word. When someone, when you finish an exam and someone's like, "What did you put for number 2?" George Washington, and they're like, "Oh, the answer was number 5."
Right.
I hate it. Gives me so much anxiety because what can you do about it after the exam?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing you can do about it. Just let it be.
I tell anyone, if you're applying to law school or you're going to law school, definitely, if you can, try to get into a clinic. You know, the clinic really changed my whole law school experience and just how I looked at the law. Because like I said, I was on academic probation, and initially I was unsure if I wanted to even do this, you know? But after going through the clinic my 3rd year, and yes, I was able to bounce back, obviously.
Cheers.
Cheers to that. Wouldn't be here with you guys. But to be able to have that experience to actually, because, you know, you guys know, I don't think law school really taught us how to be a practicing lawyer.
It taught me how to work under pressure, even while I'm anxious and that anxiety is kicking in. You have to fight through it.
Yeah.
So I learned the practical aspects of things when it comes to practicing law. Doesn't necessarily teach you exactly, okay, this is how a lawyer is supposed to be. But again, I think you get what you put in, and you get.
And
what
I agree
get
with you
out.
on that. But I think the biggest part about what we do as private attorneys is that there's that whole interaction with the client that I think is very important. I feel some lawyers definitely overlook. You know. So to have that experience of dealing with actual clients in the clinic, I think is invaluable.
That's true.
So,
and I think the clinic too, that's where you learn, you can actually put what you have learned in terms of like those very practical classes like evidence and criminal law that were, very important for what we do now. You can put those into practice.
I think the main reason why we wanted to talk about it because we do know that there are a lot of law students who are in law school now who are struggling with the experience. And I think this can also be applicable, and you would agree that there are many people struggling with many different things in life, just in general. And so, we struggled in our own ways going through this process.
And almost everyone does.
Everyone does, yes. And so we're here now, and so what I'm interested in hearing from you is what are some takeaways that you guys feel that you got from law school that can be applicable to not only the law student, but the person who is going through a vigorous program to get into, something else. Like, what would you, or what from your experiences did you guys gain that you found out was a valuable lesson that could be applied to anything in life?
I entered law school with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And I think that when I was, my first year of law school, I didn't do as well as I should have, and I could have done better. But part of the reason why I didn't do that well was because I walked in with a chip on my shoulder and I was like, I got this, it's easy. So never, for me, my biggest takeaway was don't take things for granted and be humble, which is hard to admit because I sound a little bit like an a-hole, but it's true. Like I could have done much better my first year, and your first year of law school, based on your performance, is sort of lays out the trajectory of the rest of your law school career. So if you don't do
most times,
that's true. Because look at us now. The biggest thing that I learned and I still use today because I don't ever want to underprepare for anything.
Yes,
definitely.
Yes.
So.
How about you, Sean?
Mine is all or nothing. I developed this mindset that pretty much, if I'm not willing to die for it, I don't want to do it. It's an all or nothing thing for me. And I've lived my life, henceforth, law school. I mean, going into law school. After that is, if I'm not willing to literally, this is it, this is all I have, I'm not going to do it. It's not worth my time. I'm wasting my time. So it's an all or nothing kind of deal. All chips, all bets, everything in.
I think for me, it would be, first of all, academic probation is difficult.
Yes.
And at some point within that moment, I had to make the decision whether I was going to give up or keep pushing. And for me, it made me realize that there are going to be times in life where you are currently in a difficult situation, and it may look like that this will be my life for the next whatever, but the only thing that's constant in the universe is change. And so to know that where I am right now doesn't mean that that's where I'm going to be in the future really helped me get up off my ass and say, you know what, this is not the end for me.
Yeah.
And what really helps me do that, which is another takeaway, is that I had a really, really dope, cool support system in place. You know, I have friends and colleagues that if I missed a class, they would email me the notes. You know, I have professors looking out for me. So just knowing that you can get through anything if you have a solid support system in place, and then keeping the mindset that where I am right now is not where I have to be, and I can decide to move forward in a totally different direction. It just helps me tremendously.
That's deep. That's really deep.
So it sounds like law school helped us evolve as much as I hate to
Yes.
admit it sometimes.
Yes,
But
very much so.
I think we should just make a toast
Yeah.
What are we toasting to?
to being humble, to knowing that the only thing that's constant is change,
Yes.
and also all or nothing.
All or
nothing.
nothing.
All chips on the table.
All chips on the
All or
table.
All or
nothing.
nothing.
Cheers.
Cheers.